Magandang umaga, Malacanang Press Corps. Welcome sa ating press briefing ngayong araw, January 13. Kasama natin ngayon sina Department of the Interior and Local Government Secretary Juanito Victor Remulla, Department of Justice Secretary Jesus Crispin Remulla, Prosecutor General Richard Anthony Fadulion, and National Police Commission Vice Chairperson and Executive Officer Ricardo Bernabe III para sa isang mahalagang usapin. Good morning, gentlemen. May we ask Secretary John Vic Remulla for an opening statement?
Thank you for being here. With me on the panel are the DILG and NAPOLCOM. The following are NAPOLCOM Vice Chair Executive Attorney Rico Bernabe, from the DOJ, Secretary Boying Remulla, Prosecutor Richard Anthony Fadulion. On the right is also Senior Undersecretary Raul Vasquez. Naniniwala kami sa kakayahan at integridad ng 99% ng 200,000 kapulisan. Naniniwala kami na sila ay maayos at tuwid sa trabaho. Ngunit ang ganyang kalaking organisasyon ay mahirap maging perpekto. Yung kakaunting dumudungis sa pangalan ng PNP ay dapat kalusin at ilagay sa tamang daan. Ang nais nating lahat, kasama ang kapulisan, ay kapayapaan. Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Andito po tayo para ilahad ang mga sumusunod. Una, ang laban kontra droga noon pa man ay mandato na ng PNP. Ngunit ang mandato na ito ay imposibleng makasituparan kung ang ilang nanunumpa sa katungkulan ang siya mismong kasama sa problema. Ito ay bunga ng mga iligal na kalakaran katulad ng EJK. Ang mga naatasan na lubaban kontra droga ang siya mismong gumagawa ng paraan para kumita at makinabang mula dito, na siya nagdudulot ng lalong paglaganap ng iligal na droga. Ang katarungan na may matibay na paniniwala sa tama ay hindi matitinag ng takot. Kaugnay ng pananagutang administratibo, sinuri ng komisyon ang bawat kaso batay sa mga individual na partisipasyon ng napatunayan ng ebidensya at nagpataw ng naangkop na parusa na walang kinikilingan at walang palakasan. Ang aming layunin ay maglabas lamang ng katotohanan at maghatid ng katarungan. I now turn it over to Vice Chair Rico Bernabe to explain the merits of the case.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. To provide a clear understanding of the matter, we will present the background of the entire Mayo case in several chapters, simplifying the details for easier comprehension. We now proceed with the very first chapter of this case, which is the drug transaction. On October 8, 2022, at 12:38 p.m., Sergeant Rodolfo B. Mayo was captured on CCTV at the Wealth and Personal Development and Lending Office located at Abad Santos, Tondo, Manila, carrying a white paper bag, boarding his silver Mitsubishi Montero, and leaving shortly thereafter. As shown in the footage, Sergeant Mayo, wearing a white shirt, returned to his car carrying a white paper bag of what is believed to contain 2 kilograms of shabu. Please note that the WPD Lending Office is registered to a private corporation beneficially owned by Sergeant Mayo. Between 12:42 to 1 p.m. on the same date, members of the Special Operating Unit Region 4A, SOU 4A for brevity, a unit under the Philippine Drug Enforcement Group, or PDEG, led by team leader Captain Jonathan Susongko, conducted an anti-illegal drug operations at Bambang Street, Tondo, Manila, resulting in the arrest of Sergeant Mayo for selling 2 kilograms of shabu. Notably, the operation was unreported and undocumented. The members of the operating team at Bangbang are as follows: Captain Jonathan Susongko, Patrolman Romar Bugarin, Patrolman Hasan Calao, Sergeant Carlos Bayeta, Patrolman Justin, Peter Gular, and Patrolman Dennis Carolina. Although officially unreported and undocumented, the fact of the said buy-bust operation is evidenced by admissions and testimonies of and Viber messages between PNP officials. We now proceed to the next chapter of this case, which is the spoils of war, the discovery of the large drug haul. Now, we mentioned earlier that Sergeant Mayo was arrested at Bangbang Street. However, instead of officially reporting the arrest and complying with the chain of custody rule, members of the SOU-4A with Sergeant Mayo in custody proceeded to the WPD Lending Office for an alleged follow-up operation in anticipation of a large drug haul. CCTV footage shows the silver Mitsubishi Montero returning to the WPD Lending Office at around 1 p.m. on the same date. As shown in the footage, the operative in blue alighting from the silver Mitsubishi Montero is Captain Sosonko, while the rest are members of his operating team, SOU-4A. Inside the WPD Lending Office, the operatives of the SOU-4A discovered a massive stash of shabu. Between 1:39 p.m. and 2:16 p.m., Sergeant Mayo was escorted into the WPD Lending Office and back to his vehicle 3 times. The theory is that Sergeant Mayo was directed to open the vaults located inside. Moreover, as can be observed in the footages, in all 3 instances, Sergeant Mayo was in handcuffs, which corroborates the drug transaction and this arrest in Bangbang Tondo narrated earlier in Chapter 1. The third chapter of the Mayo case will show operatives hauling away large portions of the drugs, among others, located at a WPD Lending Office. From 1:48 to 2:20 p.m., members of the Intelligence and Foreign Liaison Division, IFLD for brevity, under the PDEG group, were seen misappropriating from the large amounts of shabu found at the WPD Lending Office. As shown in the footage, from 1:48 to 1:51 p.m., Sergeant Lorenzo Catarata misappropriated 1 medium-sized luggage of shabu as it was loaded inside the white Honda Civic. Validated information from the PNP reveal that the white Honda Civic is owned by Sergeant Catarata. Thereafter, at 2:13 p.m., Sergeant Catarata and Sergeant Arnold Tibay can be seen in the footage misappropriating 1 luggage filled with shabu by carrying it on board a red Yamaha NMAX motorcycle. It can be noticed that the white Honda Civic and the red Yamaha NMAX are seen going in the same direction to the right, as there is reportedly a safe house in that area. At 2:05 p.m., Sergeant Jerwin Rebosora can be seen carrying 1 duffel bag and placing it inside the black car through its left rear door. As observed, the white Honda Civic and the red Yamaha NMAX returned to the WPD Lending Office from the rightmost area where the safe house is reportedly located. And at 2:20 p.m., Sergeant Catarata and Sergeant Rebosora can be seen loading 1 dark luggage in the trunk of the same white Honda Civic. For the next slides, we will show you screenshots of CCTV footages taken from the report of the PNP Special Investigation Task Force Group 990, which identified the respondent police officers. So here we see Sergeant Lorenzo S. Catarata. Next is Sergeant Jerwin Rebasora. And then here we have Sergeant Arnold Tibay. The operatives seen in the next slides are part of the operating unit that arrested Sergeant Mayo at Bangbang Street, who likewise participated, either directly or indirectly, in the misappropriation of drug evidence. Here is Captain Sosonko, the team leader in the arrest of Sergeant Mayo at Bangbang, and then the members of his operating team, SOU-4A, who failed to account the drug evidence at the WPD lending office. So how were we able to conclude that the contents of the haul are shabu? Because days after the incident, Colonel Rolando Portera, then chief of the IFLD, upon witnessing the acts committed by his subordinates in the footage, directed them to explain. Sergeant Rebasora admitted to Colonel Portera that the operatives, quote-unquote, saved more or less 30 kilograms of shabu, intended as a reward for their confidential informant, a patently illegal act and a blatant violation of the Comprehensive Drugs Act of 2002, among other laws. This was duly reported by Colonel Portera to Domingo, who directed the return of the saved drugs. Colonel Portera then facilitated the return of the misappropriated shabu, wherein 42 kilograms of said shabu was recovered in front of the Public Safety Mutual Benefits Fund Inc. building near Camp Crame. It is noted that the investigation report dated October 26, 2022, from the Chief IFLD states that the said 42 kilograms was packaged in green Chinese tea bags. Similarly, as seen in the pictures of the drugs seized at the WPD lending office, they are likewise packed in green Chinese tea bags. The image also shows the vaults mentioned earlier, which we theorized Mayo was directed to open. Additionally, it can be observed that some of the shabu is stored in pieces of luggage, similar to those loaded by the operatives into different vehicles. Subsequently, from 2:28 p.m. to 5:34 p.m., packages and parcels were visibly carted away from the WPD lending office as follows. As shown in the footage, from 2:28 to 2:31 p.m., Sergeant Tibay alighted from the black sedan and headed towards the WPD lending office, where operatives were loading more or less 19 packages into an L300 van as estimated by the PNP. Captain Sosonko can also be seen talking to operatives and looking for CCTV cameras in the area. At 4:41 p.m., an operative was seen carrying several paper and plastic bags from the WPD lending office before heading back. And from 5:21 to 5:34, upon the direction of Major Salmingo, Lieutenant Cabral and Patrolman Venegas were seen carrying green eco bags from the WPD lending office. So in this screenshot, we see Captain Sosonko, who in the first video of this chapter we seen looking for CCTV cameras in the area. And then here we have Lieutenant Cabral and Patrolman Venegas. We note that aside from the members of the SOU-4A and IFLD earlier identified, other police officers who arrived at the WPD lending office are as follows. So we have Marian Mananghaya, a member of the IFLD, who arrived at 3:03 p.m. And we have Ashraf Amirol, team leader of the IFLD, who arrived at 3:42 p.m. We now proceed to the next chapter of the Mayo case, which pertains to the cover-up. Due to reports of a large and unprecedented drug haul and the involvement of a PDIG officer, the following high-ranking officials of the PNP arrived at the WPD lending office from 3:45 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. as follows. Colonel Olonan is the chief of the SOU-4A. He arrived at the WPD lending office at 3:45. As shown in the footage, he may be seen alighting from a black pickup truck and entering the WPD lending office. Lieutenant Colonel Ibanez, the officer in charge of the SOU NCR, and Major Salmingo arrived at the WPD lending office at 3:54 p.m. Lieutenant Colonel Ibanez was the officer in charge of SOU NCR, the same unit where Sergeant Mayo belongs to. Police Brigadier General Domingo, the then Chief of PDEG, arrived at 3:59 p.m. As shown in the footage, General Domingo, wearing a shirt and black shorts, alighted from a white AUV and entered the WPD lending office. Lastly, Lieutenant Colonel Gonzalez, a former member of the IFLD. He arrived at the WPD lending office at 4:29 p.m. As shown in the footage, he can be seen wearing a black shirt and pants before proceeding to the WPD lending. So we are showing you images of Colonel Olonan, Colonel Gonzalez, Major Salmingo, Colonel Ibanez, and General Domingo. So to reiterate, between 3:45 to 4:30 p.m., the senior officers arrived, including Lieutenant Colonel Ibanez, who is the superior of Sergeant Mayo, and General Domingo, the head of PDEG, presumably to approve the final details of the narrative to be declared. Remember that there was no official declaration of any arrest or any anti-illegal drug operation as of this time. At 4:45, the anti-illegal drugs operation was finally formally declared, wherein they stated that a buy-bust operation was conducted, resulting in the arrest of a certain Nay S. Atadero, the caretaker of the WPD lending office, and the seizure of the remaining drugs, which would later turn out to be approximately 990 kilograms of shabu. Notably, Sergeant Mayo was excluded from the declared buy-bust operation. The first part of the cover-up therefore pertains to the decision to exclude Sergeant Mayo from the report and inventory of the anti-illegal drugs operation at the WPD lending office, and instead implicate his employee, Nay Atadero. This false narrative was used by the operatives in official documents, such as the report by General Domingo to the Acting Director for Operations. As you can see in the document, General Domingo reported that a buy-bust operation was conducted at 4:45 p.m. on October 8 at the WPD lending office, resulting in the arrest of Atadero only and the seizure of more or less 990 kilograms of shabu with an estimated standard drug price of approximately 6.7 billion. The same false narrative was further used in the submissions before the DOJ and the court. However, CCTV footage shows that no buy-bust operation was conducted at 4:45 p.m. at the WPD lending office. So we are showing you the footage at 4:45 p.m. We now move to the next chapter, the game of the generals. The first part of the cover-up, as earlier stated, pertains to the decision to exclude Sergeant Mayo from the declared buy-bust operation at 4:45. Now, the second part of the cover-up pertains to the decision to release Sergeant Mayo under the guise of a follow-up operation. As may be recalled, Lieutenant Colonel Ibanez is the boss of Sergeant Mayo, who both belong to SOU-NCR. Thus, to ensure his release, Lieutenant Colonel Ibanez attempted to induce Domingo and Colonel Olonan by stating that there is a larger warehouse in Pasig City, quote-unquote, na ituturo ni Mayo. At 6:24 p.m., Lieutenant General Benjamin D. Santos Jr., the then Deputy Chief for Operations, arrived at the WPD lending office. As shown in the footage, Lieutenant General Santos alighted from a black SUV and entered the WPD lending office. Now, after Lieutenant General Santos left at 7:19 p.m., General Domingo, Colonel Olonan, Colonel Obanez, Colonel Gonzalez, and Major Zulmingo converged at the right side of the building and brainstormed on whether, quote-unquote, tutuluyan or tutulungan si Sergeant Mayo. So all of these quotes that we are saying and all of these are produced in evidence and are corroborated by various testimonies and affidavits which have been threshed out by the Commission and can be provided in the decision itself. No? So giving into the inducement, General Domingo and Colonel Olonan approved Sergeant Mayo's release. So here's the picture of Lieutenant General Benjamin D. Santos. As alleged by General Domingo, Sergeant Mayo's release was cleared by then Chief PNP Rodolfo S. Azurin Jr. and Lieutenant General Santos. During the hearing before the Senate Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs on May 30, 2023, he stated that, quote-unquote, the Chief PNP, Azurin, and the then TDCO, Santos, approved my proposal. Sergeant Mayo and Colonel Ibanez assured me also, by the way, that they can pinpoint another warehouse with much, much bigger stocks of illegal drugs. This corroborates our earlier conclusion that Lieutenant Colonel Ibanez induced General Domingo to release Sergeant Mayo by claiming that the latter knows of another warehouse containing more drugs. At around 7:45 p.m., PNP operatives were seeing the footage removing Sergeant Mayo's handcuffs. Thereafter, at 7:50 p.m., Major Salmingo, together with Sergeant Mayo, left the WPD lending office to conduct a quote-unquote follow-up operation in Pasig City. The said operation later on will turn out to be just a mere service of a warrant of arrest. In the joint affidavit of arrest of the members of SOU-NCR, it was stated that Sergeant Mayo was the arresting officer of Judean Francisco at Sorrento Oasis in Pasig City. Here we can see Sergeant Mayo wearing a black face mask and blue PNP shirt, appearing to arrest Judean Francisco. So in the next two slides, we will show you the members of SOU-NCR involved in the service of warrant of arrest against Judean Francisco, wherein Sergeant Mayo was made the arresting officer. We now move to the last chapter, the solution, wherein PNP officials concocted a scenario to cover the slew of irregularities. To recall, we have established that Sergeant Mayo was already arrested between 12:40 to 1 o'clock p.m. at Bangbang Street for selling 2 kilograms of shabu. We have also established that Sergeant Mayo was brought to the WPD Lending Office under the custody of PNP at 1:39 p.m. until 7:50 p.m. and that the declared buy-bust operation at 4:45 p.m. was conducted solely against Atadero, excluding Sergeant Mayo. Lastly, it has been established that Sergeant Mayo was released from police custody and assigned as an arresting officer against Juden Francisco. Now, former PIDEA Director General Wilkins Villanueva learned of the release of Sergeant Mayo and texted then Chief PNP Rodolfo Azurin that, quote-unquote, according to the team leader of the operating team in Abad Santos, the PIDEG leadership did not want to include the police officer in the arrest of Mayo because it will affect their reputation. That is why they released him. According to him, it was the arrested police officer who is disposing the items, end quote. This prompted General Azurin to direct General Domingo to return Sergeant Mayo to the WPD Lending Office. However, we recall that the buy-bust was already declared at 4:45 p.m. only against Atadero and that the inventory has already begun. Thus, in an attempt to address the irregularities in Sergeant Mayo's earlier arrest and to cover up his subsequent release, Colonel Olonan, Captain Piñon, and his team staged a hot pursuit operation against Sergeant Mayo. It was reported that this alleged operation took place at Quiapo Bridge, Quezon Boulevard, Quiapo, Manila at 2:30 a.m. on October 9, 2022, resulting in the arrest of Sergeant Mayo and the seizure of 2 kilograms of shabu. Flashed on the screen is Sergeant Mayo wearing a white shirt and black cap, being arrested at Quiapo Bridge, and the 2 kilograms of shabu laid on his vehicle. What is very telling is that earlier, during the arrest of Juden Francisco, Sergeant Mayo, as the arresting officer, was seen wearing a blue PNP shirt, while in this picture, we can see that Sergeant Mayo was made to change his outfit. So in the next 2 slides, we will show you the members of those involved in the simulated hot pursuit operation. Here are other police officers who are also found liable throughout the incidents in different capacities. So this concludes the narration of the background of the Mayo case. We now proceed to discuss the developments in the administrative cases filed against the respondents. On December 13 and 19, 2024, and January 6 and 9, 2025, the NAPOLCOM and Bank resolved all the remaining cases covering 99 summary dismissal cases involving 56 respondents. As resolved by the NAPOLCOM and Bank, 21 respondents were dismissed from the service, 16 respondents were demoted in rank, 4 respondents were suspended for 6 months, and 12 respondents' cases were dismissed. With respect to the 3 respondents who are presidential appointees, our recommendation for dismissal from the service shall be subject to the confirmation by the Office of the President. Relative to the administrative case against Lieutenant General Santos, the summary dismissal proceedings against him was suspended on account of a writ of preliminary injunction issued by Judge Alice Gutierrez, Branch 193 of the Marikina City Regional Trial Court. Shown on the screen is the summary of the penalties imposed on the respondents. Flashed on the screen is the chart of the personalities involved or mentioned throughout the incident. It is estimated that 1.5 tons of shabu comprise the accounted and unaccounted haul in the Mayo case with an estimated street value of 10.151 billion. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you.
To close before I turn it over to the SOJ. Considering the foregoing, this is my personal opinion that there appears to be a grand conspiracy to conceal a criminal enterprise within the PNP. It must be inherent in the institution that with the responsibility of being an officer of the law comes with the power alone, does not make you impervious to prosecution. We have pursued the fullness of this case on an administrative level. However, the final determination of criminal liability rests with the Department of Justice and the courts concerned. I now turn over the floor to the Department of Justice.
Thank you. The one to do the talking today would be PG Fadulion and Yusek Vasquez. I have no voice.
Good morning, everyone. As a result of the investigation conducted by the NAPOLCOM and the cases that were filed by both NAPOLCOM and the CIDG, PNP CIDG, the Department of Justice, as early as 2023, had already begun evaluating the cases that were referred to us. In a resolution that we issued last December, the Department of Justice recommended the filing of cases for violation of Section 29, that is planting of evidence, Section 29 of Republic Act 9165, against 30 individuals. And at the same time, we recommended the filing of informations before the court for violation of Section 92. This is for delay and bungling in the prosecution of drug cases, also under RA 9165, against 30 individuals. These cases have now been filed and are now pending before the regional trial courts of Manila. We understand that per the last information provided to us, warrants of arrest have already been issued. Also, as a consequence of these cases that we filed and based on the evidence that were submitted to us, we are convinced that the Department of Justice now has to seriously evaluate and reevaluate the cases that have been filed earlier and are now pending before another regional trial court in Manila. These are the cases filed against Sergeant Rodolfo Mayo and Ney Atadero, which are now pending prosecution. The cases, we have to understand that these cases were filed based on the information that we have that were provided to the Department of Justice panel. These cases were investigated in an inquest proceeding by prosecutors from the Office of the City Prosecutor of Manila. But after reviewing the evidence, that were presented, which resulted to the filing of the cases for bungling and planting of evidence, we believe and we are seriously considering the possibility of withdrawing these cases, because it would now appear that these cases were filed based on false allegations, and fallacious evidence.
We're now, Yusek Vasquez, you want to add something?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. With the receipt of the comprehensive report from the NAPOLCOM, the DILG and NAPOLCOM, which led to the finding of guilt of many PNP officials, the matter will now be subjected to comprehensive case build-up under existing DOJ rules in order to determine who would be responsible criminally, and based on the evidence presented plus additional pieces of evidence that we may gather in the course of further investigation, we may be initiating the criminal cases in due time, and that would be initiated soon. We will re-evaluate pending cases in order to have quality cases and evidence-supported litigation against those responsible.
Thank you, sirs. We are now opening the floor to the Malacanang Press Corps for questions. First question, Chona Yu, journal.
Secretary, good morning. Sir, moving forward, ano pong gagawin ng DILG? Ano pong mga reforma ang ipatutupad sa PNP para hindi na maulit yung ganitong insidente?
Well, unang-una, gusto namin baguhin ang PNP reform law. Kasi ang lumalabas dito, yung mga involved sa officers involved ay walang specialty sa ginagawa nila. Obviously, Major General Domingo, General Santos were not duly informed or are not specialized in drug cases. So, it seems na nagkamali sila sa decision making. Ang gusto namin magkaroon ng institutional memory ang bawat department, from drug enforcement to cybercrime to administration to investigation. Dapat specialized na talaga ang mga policemen. That's just where we are heading.
So ano yun, sir? Parang may schooling na
No,
kailangan-
we will introduce legislation para from next year on, magkakaroon na rin ng 4 tracks ang PNP. Pagdating mo ng captain level, you will be either put in administration, investigation, cybercrime, and ano ba yun? Administration. So magkakaroon na ng institutional memory ang bawat department. Ang nangyayari kasi ngayon, 1 taon nasa investigation ka, 2 taon nasa drug ka, 1 taon nasa administration ka, palipat-lipat lang sila. So yung nakikita nyo clearly na yung mga top officers involved were not aware of the procedural matters to be followed. So, lumaki na lumaki. Ang nangyari, yung nasa ilalim, sila nag-decision. Yung mga nasa taas, nakikisama na lang.
Sir, last na lang. Bakit hindi kasama sa kaso yung dating PNP chief na mention? Or
Hindi siya kasama sa DILG, NAPOLCOM, kasi nung hearing ng case na to, retired na siya. But it does not make him impervious sa case build-up ng DOJ.
so meron pa rin?
Meron pa rin. Sa amin kasi administrative lang eh. Sa kanila ang criminal.
Criminal. Pasok pa rin siya, sir.
Again, I must reiterate, there seems to be a grand conspiracy to conceal a criminal enterprise. Tignan nyo yung kaso, from sergeant to chief PNP, kasama lahat sa kwento.
Thank you, sir.
Next question, Alvin Baltazar, Radyo Pilipinas.
Secretary, magandang umaga po. Secretary, sino ba yung tumati yung leader ng grupo?
That has to be determined by the DOJ.
Pero, ang nabanggit din kasi dito, sir, si dalawang general.
Again, it has to be determined by the DOJ kung sino talaga ang criminal. Sa amin lang kung ano nakita namin and the facts of the case.
Salamat po.
Pia Gutierrez, ABS-CBN.
Hi, sir. Sir, do you see the need to look into the other previous arrests made by this unit to determine whether this is not a one-time thing?
It is our theory that this goes all the way to 2016. Naging institutional practice na siya mula 2016 hanggang nahuli to ng 2022. It seems that it became a standard procedure ng mga ilang elements ng PNP na magkaroon ng mga drug haul, re-report ng konti, ibobodega ang marami. It seems to be that way. And what we have done now for the first time is to show conclusively that a criminal enterprise involving the selling, the arrest, the storage, the intent to distribute, and the intent to cover up, all in one day nangyari. So it shows, that's why I said a grand conspiracy of a criminal enterprise.
Sir, following the revelation of this supposed criminal enterprise, is there a need to extend this investigation to other units of the PNP? Magkakaroon po ba ng PNP-wide investigation?
Yes, we will go back to 2016 all the way down to 2022.
Again, sir, why 2016?
It is our theory, but not proven, na dahil sa reward system na ginawa instituted by the PNP when 2016 started, ang drug haul ay hindi nire-report at tuwing dahil may reward, kukuha sila ng tingi, ilalagay doon, may reward, may accomplishment. So doon nagkaroon yung bodega, kuha, arrest, reward, promotion. Parang gano'n na naging sistema nila.
Next question, Clazel Pardilla, PTV4.
Sir, good morning. How compelling is the evidence to guarantee the conviction and imprisonment of those involved?
I think PG should answer.
Yes. As far as the evidence that were presented to us, no, and as far as the persons charged, the 30 police officers with ranks of Police Lieutenant General, Police Brigadier General, all the way down to Police Master Sergeant, we believe that the evidence is strong enough to warrant a conviction, because we have this new policy in the department now that we only make sure that the cases that are elevated in court are cases which will be able to stand the rigors of trial and end up in eventual conviction. So as far as the Department of Justice is concerned, with the two cases that were recently filed, we are confident that we will be able to muster a conviction for all those charged.
Next question, Ivan Mayrina, GMA7.
Sirs, may I ask again the status of these involved police officers? Nabanggit niyo kanina may mga summarily dismissed na, but none of them are under custody since wala pa hong warrants against them. Tama po ba?
Mayo and sino pa ba? Mayo is under custody right now. Siya kasi yung unang na-charge.
Siya lang po.
At siya kasi Atadero yata. No?
Pero sino pa ho ang nasa active service technically?
Almost all of them.
Almost all of them.
Yes. Except yung mga iba niyang retired na. Like si Azurin was not included in our case build-up because he was retired already when this case was brought forth.
Pero are they still allowed to perform the duties of a police officer?
Okay. Please answer.
Yes, no. So we released the decision just recently. Prior to release, they were all in the active service, except for those who retired in the course of these proceedings. But until this decision, they were still all active.
But sir, knowing their involvement, possible involvement in something this big of a crime, hindi ho ba natin sila i-monitor at least habang pending evaluation of their cases?
BG.
Well, I think considering the fact that there are already cases filed against them, no, and although meron na pong findings doon sa administrative case, it becomes necessary, no, that we somehow are aware of the movements, we are aware of the whereabouts of all these police officers, so that in the event that the warrants are actually issued and received by the Philippine National Police, the same can be immediately and easily implemented. Okay? So, inihintay lang po natin na lumabas yung mga kaukulang warrant galing sa husgado at yan naman po ay kaagad ipadadala sa PNP. Now, considering na nasa serbisyo pa po yung iba rito dahil sa maaari pa naman po silang mag-apila doon sa kanilang administrative case, baka mas mapapadali po kung sakasakali pong alam natin ang kanilang pinagkakalagyan sa ngayon.
Last question from my end. 1.5 tons of shabu, a staggering quantity. Na-trace na ho ba natin saan galing ito at nasaan ho itong drugs ito as we speak?
We have theories, but unsubstantiated. Pero it looks like it came from the drug halls in Pampanga, saan pa? Pampanga, La Union, Pangasinan, Quezon? Bulacan.
Imported ho ito, hindi niluto dito.
Hindi, imported lahat. Lahat yan, most of them naka-Chinese tea green bags. And consistent with the investigations over there, they would only declare, I think, 10%. And the rest, binubodega na.
Next question, Tristan Nodalio, Newswatch Plus.
Hi sir, good morning po. Sir, just a follow-up dun sa nabanggit nyo na kanina na you're looking at as way back as 2016 and by reward system. Sir, na-mention na rin doon before sa Quadcom hearings. Is the DILG and DOJ parang likely to believe na meron nga pong reward system nung panahon ni dating Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte?
I think it was made very clear during the Quadcom by the PCSO chair, Garma, that there was a reward system, that there was a corresponding value to every seizure and arrest and killing corresponding to the number of grams or kilograms accompanying the suspect. So we have to look back further into that on the mechanisms that they use.
Pag sinabi kasi, sir, grand conspiracy, no, baka meron pa bang ibang officials higher than the police officials that you are also looking at?
Not yet. We are only concentrated on the police officials. But the subsequent investigation does not preclude anybody. Everybody is still open.
Next question. Tina Maralit.
Good morning, Secretary. Sir, regarding this plan to investigate going as far back as 2016, paano po yung mga opisyal ng PNP na retirado na kung mapapatunayan pong may kinalaman sila dun sa sinasabing grand conspiracy, yung mga retirement benefits po ba babawiin at
let's not go too far about that, yung anong penalties. But as far as DILG is concerned, wala kaming admin capacity to prosecute. As far as DOJ is concerned, then they have the capacity to investigate, to prosecute, to build a full case regarding the involvement of other officials.
Thank you, sir.
Next question, Sam Medinilla, Business Mirror.
Aside po from dun sa involved sa Mayo case, may other pending cases pa po ba involving police sa drug cases?
Meron po tayong mga involvement sa drug cases but not as big as this one. Mga ano lang po yun, mga isolated instances or mga individual police na may illegal acts but not at this scale wherein a group of policemen are working together to consume the illegal act.
Mga ilan po kaya yung cases na yun?
We do not have the figure with us now but we can provide you later on.
Thank you.
Do you have more questions from the media? Alvin Baltazar, Radio Pilipinas.
Secretary, habol ko na lang po. Ito ba mga sangkot na officers, police officials, nag-undergo ng lifestyle check?
I think after the criminal proceedings, criminal charges will be filed, then AMLA will be enjoined to investigate them also. After a criminal case has been filed and established.
And that will include lifestyle checks, sir?
That will include their AMLA accounts, which leads to their lifestyle checks.
Thank you, sir.
Do you have more questions from the media? Ana Bajo, GMA News Online.
Good morning po. Other matter lang, sir, kay Yusek Vasquez. Baka may update na po sa investigation ng NBI doon sa alleged threat ni Vice President Sara Duterte sa first couple and kay Speaker Romualdez.
Yes, we were informed already that the NBI had finished its investigation, but there's a need to further evaluate it, and we are sending prosecutors over to look at the evidence and evaluate the evidence that is in the custody of the National Bureau of Investigation. Depending on the outcome, we will be able to make a recommendation whether to have it considered filed already before the department and or to return it to the NBI if there's a need to build up the case further and to add to the evidence that they have. But this is subject to evaluation. The NBI and the DOJ are working closely together, our prosecutors, to ascertain the evidence that is on hand.
That's part of the case build-up, the evaluation stage that was referred to by PG Richard. Once the evaluation is confirmed to be enough to warrant preliminary investigation, that's the time that the preliminary investigation proper would be initiated.
Thank you, sir.
Christian Yesores.
Good morning, sir. Other matters din po tungkol sa DOJ, kung may result na po yung ginawang investigation ng task force on EJK, natapos na po ba yung 60 days na period?
Yes, and they are expected to give a periodic report, and that's an ongoing report naman, Christian. So it didn't end upon the end of the 60-day period initially given the task force. And it's something that will require further coordination with other investigating agencies and committees, Quadcom included, in order for us to have a greater hold of the pieces of evidence needed to initiate preliminary investigation if proper.
Pero so far, sir, wala pang nakikitang concrete evidence na pwede nang mag-file sa court against the former officials.
That will be the subject of the case build-up.
Thank you, sir.
Ivan Mayrina, GMA7.
May we also get an update, sirs, on the DOJ's probe on the admissions made by former President Rodrigo Duterte before the Quadcom? It was previously announced that the DOJ is investigating those statements as well.
That's part of the mandate of the task force that was given 60 days, Ivan. So they will be submitted to us, the report, and then we will evaluate if that's enough to initiate some investigation further.
Sean Ayu, People's Journal.
Sir, sa DOJ under ng NBI and then DILG under ng PNP, if I remember it right, nung previous briefing namin dito, hinahanap nila yung taong sinasabing kinausap ni Vice President Sara to assassinate the President. Any update on that?
We do not have the exact details yet of the results of the investigation with the NBI. We were just advised last week that they have finished it. So I think that'll be part of the things that we'll be looking into when we send our prosecutors to find out if they have any information leading to the one who was contacted supposedly by the Vice President to execute the acts.
Last question, Pia Gutierrez, ABS-CBN News.
Sir, can we clarify, ano po yung mga criminal cases na tinitignan natin following the re-evaluation of the evidence at hand?
Referring to these cases that we're taking up now. Okay, it was mentioned in the report of the DILG and the NAPOLCOM that there are certain personalities, there were certain personalities that were mentioned, among whom were not included. They were not included in the charges that were earlier filed. So this will mean that based on results of the investigation by the NAPOLCOM or by any PNP unit, if any case is referred to the department, we will look into it and look into the involvement of the other personalities. There is nothing which will preclude the department from amending the informations that we have filed already or to file new charges if there are in fact other cases that may be filed as against them. So still, I think it would be in connection with the case of bungling. It would still be in connection with the case of planting of evidence. But again, to be more comprehensive about it, we have to look at also the situation or the circumstances surrounding the recovery, the initial recovery of the 990 kilos of drugs, the source, because I think we have to look further into that. So it all depends on the evidence that will be submitted to us. We will make the necessary assessment, and if we are convinced that there is a need to include other personalities, we will do so.
Before we end, may we ask Secretary John Vic Remulla for his closing statement?
Thank you very much, everyone. This case was originally brought forth to the NAPOLCOM, kailan ba? 2022. Inupuan po ng 2 taon to. Nung pinalitan po si Commissioner Bernabe, si Bernardo. Vice Bernabe took over and he prosecuted the case with full intent to uncover the truth. Yung inuupuan kasi na kaso is justice denied. So, ginawa namin, bago na, pinaspasan na namin to para makita talaga ang katotohanan.
Thank you very much, Secretary John Vic Remulla, Secretary Boying Remulla, PG Fadulion, VCO Bernabe, and Yusek Vasquez. And that wraps up our press briefing for this afternoon. Maraming salamat, Malacanang Press Corps, at magandang umaga po.